Evening. It's really great to hear all of these exciting projects and wonderful to be here with Nick Rowe from York St John, one of the project partners that we worked with for Converge Leeds. We call it up at the top there Converge Recovery College, which we'll explain a bit more as we go along. But Nick, if you'd like to start us off.
Yeah, I thought I'd introduce you to Converge and the idea of Converge. I, as a psychiatric nurse originally, and then a drama therapist and an academic at York St John, teaching both in health and the arts. 10 years ago, I decided to offer a course to local people in the city in theatre. A theatre course that would be delivered in the university to local people who use mental health services, and I would engage my students to deliver it, to deliver the course with me. And that basic idea has grown hugely from that small beginning. Because it's based on two key assumptions. One, that real benefit would come from inviting local people in the city to come into the university and to engage in theatre with us in a proper theatre space, and to engage and to learn theatre from people kind of people who know something about it. And secondly, that real benefit would come to our students from working with people who use mental health services, learning from that group. And learning how to translate their subjects for people who are new to it. So that's where Converge began. But that basic idea, courses offered in the university to local people who use mental health services, and to involve university students in delivery, developed from there. So currently now, 10 years later, we have courses at York St John in theatre, dance, music, fine art, creative writing. We've got a choir, which is made up of students and people who use mental health services in the city. We've got courses in design, stained glass making, courses in psychology, life coaching, and sports exercise, all of which have that same model, which we've called the Converge model. The reason we call it Converge is it's convergence of interests of a university on the one hand, getting the benefit of working alongside people who use mental health services, and mental health providers on the other. And in terms of its funding, that is by and large now, after 10 years, coming from the NHS Trust, Tees Esken Wear Valley NHS Trust. So, having established it in Leeds, and you might know that Leeds and York NHS Trust they're connected together. I was invited to see if we could develop this in Leeds, and Ali was one of the people that I met early on. What's happened in Leeds is this last year we've managed to offer 4 courses across 4 educational institutions in Leeds. Where we offered a course in sports coaching at Leeds Trinity, electronic music at Leeds Beckett, songwriting at Leeds College of Music, and finally, and this is the project we've come to talk about tonight, theatre at Leeds University, and Ali will continue that.
Thanks. So alongside what I'll be telling you about is some of the documentation made by a professional photographer, because I thought it was important for us to try and capture some of the exciting collaborative, creative experimentation that often happens behind closed doors in my discipline, which is applied theatre, where normally we're doing things that are process-based. We don't always have final outcomes. So these are the quite beautiful images, I'm sure you'll agree. The model that we use mirrors that of Converge York, which is that it's about peer education. So the Ignite funding helped to pay for 3 of my MA Applied Theatre and Intervention interns who shadowed alongside me for the 8-week course that we ran from February to April. We saw that course as an introduction to theatre and performance, which was mainly around improvisation and some script work, which you'll see in the pictures. And out of that were several informal sharings, as well as the students documenting the pedagogic model. One of the unanticipated outcomes was some nice coverage on BBC Look North, which featured a segment on Converge Leeds in May, which was after the final evaluation event, where all 4 of the institutions brought their Converge students alongside the student interns together to try and understand what had happened over the periods of the courses. Perhaps we can talk a bit about the aims, Nick?
Yeah.
Yeah?
Okay, so the aims of Converge are to offer educational experiences inside a university environment, and that has been crucial to me and to Converge really in its development, that it needs to be inside a university environment. There's a real value to invite people into a place like this and to use the resources that you have here, because at the heart of Converge is this notion of harnessing the university and all it has to the benefit of people who are often don't get those kinds of opportunities, and to make use of this, the richness of a university for the benefit of people who use mental health services. So the key thing is it takes place in a university. Secondly, that we focus not on the mental health problem. This is not therapy. We focus on the art or the subject area, the learning. So we work with people around theatre or music or singing or psychology, but we focus on the subject area, not on their problem. If you've had a long-term mental health problem, you get sick of talking about your problem all the time. The more you talk about your problem, the more the problem becomes exacerbated. So we focus on the subject area, on the learning. That's a key principle of Converge. The third is that we involve our students, university students, as Ali has done in the delivery of the courses, the support of people who take part in the courses. We have what's called our Student Buddy program, and the evaluation of the courses. So the aim is to involve the students. The university aren't going to totally sign up for this if we can't involve students in it. And finally, there's a kind of principle around what's called a mental health co-production. So increasingly that people who use mental health services are engaged in delivering courses. In York, we now have 9 people that we pay who've had long-term mental health problems as tutors on courses and in the evaluation of our courses and in mentoring and so on. So those principles really are the ones that kind of hold Converge together and give it its characteristics.
So as you can see, this partnership was a joy. Yeah, it landed in my lap about 5 days after I had started in my job here at Leeds. So I said, yes, of course, we'll go ahead and do it. And from that first 8 weeks, which we conducted, as I said, in semester 2, so February to April, we've managed to continue on a rolling basis with a core group of people. We have 5 people that continued every week to come onto campus, and 2 of the students had continued to help me to deliver voluntarily this time, not with Ignite money. So I thought we could share some of the insights that came from the theatre and performance Converge students, people who made comments on the quality of tuition, comments about well-being, confidence, of course, and the idea that learning through the creative arts can often help to alleviate the self-criticism that people might otherwise have. It's also quite important to mention that as part of the Ignite project, I also made a partnership with the School of Nursing and a mental health nursing lecturer there who provided supervision for our MA interns who were able to then work through some of the potential difficulties that might have arisen during the sessions, which helped them to make notes for their onward course. Some more of the evaluation here. Again, this is a testament to the quality that people felt they experienced and feeling part of something, which other speakers tonight have also mentioned, and the idea that we don't just learn in one direction, that it happens to all of us, that we're learning from one another, which I think is quite powerful. So I've mentioned here that some of those participants continue to participate. This, to me, is a huge success story. People leaving the house week after week to come and participate in an activity on campus. It can be a struggle, but it's a sign of perseverance. The MA students, some of whom are also reflected in the images, developed 3 outcomes that they looked at. 1 produced a toolkit on arts and mental health. 1 developed an evaluation of pedagogies and process. And 1 analysed the creative content of the workshops, which is very useful for me as I go forward. We're going to continue Converge next year, so I'll be able to draw on those as formal documents and not just my lesson plans that we had on the hoof. So a couple more things that we had in mind to talk about just in relation to CCG perhaps, and where to next, Nick?
Yeah, because obviously this work's going to need funding, particularly if we're going to offer it across those 4 institutions I met earlier. So a lot of the work that we've been doing in the last few months is really to get on side with health providers and health funders. So just recently we've been working a lot with the clinical commissioning groups. One particular clinical commissioning group in York who have committed funding for the next 18 months to provide the administrative and coordination support for Converge in Leeds. So that's a real step forward for us. So will provide that coordination, administrative support, enrollment, registration on courses, support of students who are coming into, people who use mental health services are coming onto campus, supporting that. So that's a big step forward for us in securing that funding and enabling the kind of valuable stuff that Ali's doing on the ground with her students.
Great, and just this poster is from one of the outcomes, so I'll talk briefly about those. We had 3 public sharings of performance, one which happened in the first course in Clothworker South in April. We did another one in Clothworker South for general people that were interested in coming along in June. We just did this performance last week in the Love Arts Festival in White Cloth Gallery, Story Strands, which was a fantastic development and a new partnership, if you like, with one of the largest arts and mental health festivals and organisation, Arts and Minds. We had, as I mentioned previously, the Converge evaluation event at Inkwell Arts in Chapeltown, and a further exciting and unexpected event that happened in collaboration with Arts and Minds and Signet Private Hospital, Psychiatric Hospital in Bailey, who they brought 6 service users, inpatients, and 3 colleagues to come along and deliver training on arts and mental health to my students and to interested parties, and attend a workshop where the MA students shared some of their findings from the process. So some of the things that we learned mirror really the things that other folks have mentioned about collaboration, the joys and sometimes the challenges, but really the profundity of the idea of campus not as closed. And actually here we don't have gates that close our campus, so it physically mirrors this notion that the public may enter freely. What we might think about a little bit more, and which we're talking about in the consortium, relates to research, how this might lead onwards to research findings, what we want to evaluate and how. But for me, at this point, it's quite important that we focus on the pedagogies rather than put pressure on people's mental health to try and feel like they have to demonstrate well-being every week, week after week, in particular. And one of the places that we will go ahead and disseminate that work is going to be at a conference that Nick is running in York next June. Is that correct? Great. So I thought just to finish, if we could acknowledge the hard work of my MA students and the other third silent partner who's also not here tonight, Karen Pearse from Leeds Mind, who's been completely amazing. Thank you.
Thank you.